Welcome to Thrival Mode, imagining sovereignty for immigrant neighborhoods. We all share land, yet access to land has always and continues to be a source for perpetuating oppression. The land that I'm talking about today, and that a lot of us share, is in fact stolen from indigenous people, then transformed by slave labor. The connection between land, genocide, displacement, and cultural erasure not only is a part of American history, it has directed our history. The American pattern of land planning, simply put, is colonize, people are displaced and erased. Land is segregated, people are displaced and erased. Land is gentrified, people are displaced and erased. And when I say gentrification, I mean the intentional or unintentional transformation of a neighborhood to conform to white middle-class taste. And we should not let the current participatory urban planning processes fool us. In no way are they participatory to the extent that it lends us to personal sovereignty. It merely masks the concentration of power around planning and the feeling of insecurity of changing neighborhoods we call home. Hi, I'm Dhara. I'm a racial justice organizer and a social designer. My practice uses the organizing strategy of community visioning and futuring, combined with a love of experience design to begin practicing how we would vision our neighborhoods to reclaim our power. And I have the pleasure of working in the wonderful Sunnyside Queens, a long-established immigrant neighborhood in Western Queens. Many would describe Sunnyside as a small town vibe with a city pace. And Sunnyside doesn't really have any one dominant immigrant culture. It is a mix of South Asians, Southeast Asians, Latinx, and European populations. Sunnyside is also uniquely positioned geographically and in this time. It is next to two neighboring communities, Long Island City and Astoria, and is also seen as a gateway to immigrant communities like Woodside and Jackson Heights. Long Island City and Astoria are important because there are two neighborhoods that have been rapidly gentrifying over the years. And now, bridging Long Island City and Sunnyside is Sunnyside Yards, the Economic Development Corporation's project to transform a railway into who knows what. This much contested development by both the residents and the business owners of Sunnyside is an imminent threat to a specific population: immigrant small business owners, who I've been working with. Immigrants to this country decide to open a business for many reasons. One is stability and security and to ensure a livelihood for their family. Another is to help bridge their traditions and their customs and their culture from their old home to their new home. Many of the business owners that I talk to describe their work and their business as an act of love or a service for the community. And the small businesses, especially in Sunnyside, really define the neighborhood character and the culture of the area. From their storefronts, to the music playing, to the wonderful smells wafting out of their storefronts, these businesses are the fabric of our community. And in Sunnyside, they're somewhat geographically divided. According to residents in Sunnyside, it's divided between the white side of the neighborhood, above Queens Boulevard, and the Spanish side of the neighborhood, south of Greenpoint Avenue. And this land is managed by business improvement districts, also known as BIDs. Locally based nonprofit organizations that are formed and managed by commercial property owners and the New York City Department of Small Business Services. The main purpose of these nonprofits is to create enticing districts for people to shop and spend time in order to protect and enhance the property value of these commercial property owners. They do things like provide supplemental sanitation on top of what City Council already offers. They manage plazas and hold cultural events. And they also plan events for marketing, like the Taste of Sunnyside, to highlight and market certain businesses. This concept of a bid may seem like a new concept to you, but chances are, if you live in New York City or you've visited New York City, you've probably stepped foot on land that is managed by a bid. For example, Times Square, Hudson Yards, And if you're an SEA student, you've likely hung out in the Flatiron District, just blocks away from our classroom. These are not just local to NYC either. They're used internationally to manage and transform land. These nonprofit entities wield a lot of power within their organization. They work with local government officials and are managed by people who make final decisions on land planning. And we also have to remember that the people who manage this institution are also influenced by external forces and entities as well. All while the people who are actually impacted by the work that bids do or don't do are residents and small businesses, though they have the least decision-making power within these organizations. In New York City, there are 76 bids, and in 2019, they invested $167 million into these neighborhoods. And they measure impact based on how many trash bags are collected and how many new social media followers they get a day. Yet, small businesses continue to close. And bids, because they are managed by commercial property owners and not small businesses themselves, cannot fundamentally prioritize the immediate needs of small businesses, especially since their needs contradict the needs of property owners. To complicate this matter further, I found out that a lot of the businesses within the district actually pay the levy that property owners owe to the bid every year, on top of their already exorbitant rent. And these business owners are struggling to make ends meet as it is. They're working nonstop to barely scrape by. They have to make decisions between taking care of their personal stuff and their families or their businesses. And of course, they don't have trust in these institutions that are supposed to support them. Why would they? So how might we shift power within these systems to hold these institutions accountable to the needs of the community? A bid has a yearly budget that the small business owners actually pay into. So what if we were able to open up their budget and have the business owners actually vote on the activities that they would like to see happen with their money? This is similar to the participatory budgeting process that happens within City Council every year, but this one needs a refresh. We need something that is in-person, multilingual, and has an equity-centered lens. With our ballot that we designed, we asked specific demographic questions around where they're located geographically, like what street they're near, and also if they're an immigrant or a person of color that owns a business. The reason is we know that the needs of immigrant business owners and people of color are vastly different than those with more privilege. And as we've experienced, geographic location within Sunnyside specifically matters to what sort of access to resources you're getting. So with this, I went door to door and collected ballots from the different business owners. And the most important part is accountability. Will the bid actually use this equity-centered lens to develop their budget? And if not, what will happen? So publicly displaying the results and communicating the results is really important back to the business owners. Publicly, we might want to display their ballots for everyone to see. And online, we might want to show what are the different results that we get from an equity-centered lens versus what the bid is doing now. And the next step is to mobilize and organize the business owners together to help hold the bid accountable to the needs of their community. Another element in this current system is the lack of involvement of immigrant business owner voice in state and local governance. The state senators started hosting these small business advisory councils in 2019 to get an insight into what small businesses are feeling, but they were held in a different neighborhood. And if you're an immigrant small business owner, that is almost impossible to leave your storefront to go to a meeting in a different neighborhood. So how can we redesign these meetings to go from one where there is no participation to citizen control? In the redesign of this meeting, we invited the council to come to Sunnyside to make it more accessible. We offered multiple languages, childcare, and had food. And eventually, it would be wonderful if we could even pay people to come to the meeting so they didn't have to make a choice between making a sale and attending a meeting. The invite and agenda was also intentionally designed. We went door to door, inviting all the business owners that we had relationships with, and also reminding them of the meeting that was happening when the time came. We also wanted to co-create an agenda, which is very important. And so what we did was, in these reminders and in these times when we were just going to talk to the business owners, and sometimes when we were doing participatory budgeting, we would talk about different things that were on their mind to be able to bring them to the committee. And with this information, we were able to co-create the agenda with the Small Business Advisory Council co-chair, who is a small business owner herself. For the meeting, I researched upcoming policies that would affect small businesses and created documents that codify the language so that business owners knew what was coming up and can provide opinions on how it would affect them. We had our first redesign meeting on February 28th. Typically, these meetings get 1 to 2 immigrant business owners. This time, half of the people in the room were immigrant business owners. And more importantly, there was a beautiful exchange between the business owners and the state senator. There's been a policy within City Council that's been kind of going nowhere for a while around commercial rent stabilization. And as we saw, commercial rent stabilization is crucial to the survival of these businesses. In conversation with the senator, he couldn't necessarily do anything at the city level because he's at the state level. But a few weeks later, he informed us that he was beginning to craft policies around what a commercial rent stabilization could look like for the entire state of New York. And fast forwarding today to COVID, the senator is actually making policies around canceling residential and commercial rent and creating specific relief packages around those who have lost income or who had to close their business completely. Today, small businesses are even more threatened than they have ever been. The funding resources that are available are not accessible to these communities. Shake Shack is able to apply for these funding resources and get access to them before the real small businesses are able to. In order to apply for these funds, you have to have access to a computer, access to Wi-Fi. Grants are going quickly, loans involve interest and a long repayment period, and everything is in English. Now is the time to very specifically and intentionally design efforts around care for communities who have often been neglected and are the ones who are literally running our country right now. So what do we do now? In the immediate term, Shah CDC came up with wonderful calls to action. Ensure all New Yorkers receive aid, create specific New York City immigrant and PSC small business grants, and provide supplemental relief for low-income New Yorkers. And looking forward in the future, we need to redesign the system of power around rent. We need access to high-quality healthcare for everyone. And we need a universal livable income, not just what the bosses can afford. We also desperately need to return land to people and nature while reconciling with the truth of the land's history. Thank you.